Hello and welcome to the Static Traveller with me, James. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Static Traveller podcast, the podcast where I speak to travellers of the past and the present from around the globe, and I let them tell you in their own words about their adventures throughout this amazing world. Today's guest on the podcast is traveller Eleanor Marie, so why don't you sit back, relax, enjoy the stories, and tell us what you think in the comments below. Thanks.
Eleanor, hello. Welcome to the Static Traveller. So why don't you just introduce yourself to everyone and let them just know a little bit more about yourself.
Right, so just anything or...
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, my name is Eleanor. How long have I been travelling? That's a question of... it's something that I did a lot as a child with my parents. We liked going on, or my dad liked going on camping holidays. He was very into caving. He was very into hill climbing. So that was some of my first holidays that I remember was climbing in Bettysley Coach in Wales, where they had a club membership. They liked going to see castles and gardens, that kind of thing. And so I developed an interest in it. I wasn't really that aware that I enjoyed it so much until about 2001, when just reading the Falkirk Herald, there was an advert for one of those charity trips. They were looking for, excuse me, should I turn the cuckoo clock off?
That's all right, it's fine.
Yeah. They were looking for volunteers to raise money to go and walk the Inca Trail for the Anthony Nolan and Bone Marrow Trust.
Okay.
And I don't know why, I just looked at that and thought, I'm doing that. I don't know what that picture's of or where it is, but I'm going to do that. And that was just it. It opened because I remember somebody saying to me, if you get the chance to go to university away from home, then do it, because it will broaden your horizons so much more. I kind of know what they mean now, because it was the same with that trip for me, that I'd been so focused on the local area that I'd suddenly go on this trip and meet people who've done all these trips. They're talking about backpacking around Egypt and Southeast Asia, and I'm sitting there going, I want to do this. I want to do more of this. So it was pretty much all I thought about for the next 2.5 years, because I was in university at the time. So I finished university and worked every hour I possibly could to save up my money. And I went around the world. Very end, it was Boxing Day, no, 28th of December 2005, I went for about 9 months.
Is that when you left? Is that when you left?
That was when I set off to go on my around the world, starting in Egypt, then down to Tanzania, onto South America, up towards Mexico, down into New Zealand, Australia, and then up to China before coming home. And I was home 3 months before I was off again. And now it's just every time I get holidays, I'm off.
It's funny you say that, because everyone I speak to, it's all about, actually building up to actually going. And then once they go, they come back for like couple of months, and it's like, right, I need to go again, and they've lost that hesitance. They're just like, right, let's go.
Yeah.
So
it's really funny, because I remember being in Egypt on my very first night, and I got there and I suddenly thought, because I totally misunderstood how you worked out the Egyptian currency into pounds, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm only just getting into my bed, and I'd had an absolute nightmare trying to get from the airport to the hotel. I think I'd had a few people rip me off. And I just got into my bed thinking, this is terrible. I'm out here. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know anything about backpacking. My money's not going to last anything. It doesn't like as long as I thought, and I want to go home. But
But you braved it out.
Yeah.
Worth it in the long haul. So are you originally from Falkirk?
I've lived here since 1991.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, we were living in Milton Keynes, because my dad works for the oil industry. So he himself was from Kent. My mum was from Bingley, Yorkshire way, I think.
Okay.
And because my dad worked for the oil, he got moved about a lot. So I ended up being born in Merseyside. I have a sister born in Aberdeen and another one born in Milton Keynes.
So are you a Liverpool or an Everton fan?
Well, I was only 4 months old when we moved to Aberdeen, so I don't know if that really counts. I kind of think of Keynes is that's where I have all my childhood memories.
Okay.
So
All right. So what we'll do is we'll just do some like icebreaker questions. All right. And then we can get into the travel chat after that. So when you're traveling, what is your travel essentials? So what must you have with you?
what must I have with me? Well, my phone and my passport has become my two essentials, because you can do so much with your phone now. You can check in with it. You can use it to print all your boarding cards. Have to have music, but again, that's on my phone. And I now pretty much use my phone as my camera as well. Oh gosh. There's a few little things that I've picked up along the way that I carry around for good luck. One of them was I bought it caused a huge argument one Christmas, because I was showing it to my uncle. I said, well, I bought this in Egypt, and in Egypt it's really common that you can buy little models and figurines of Isis, but not so many of Osiris. So when I was talking to a stall holder and I mentioned that I wanted one, he took me round to the back to show me his little secret cupboard for all the true, and he shows me this metal figure of Osiris, it was unusual, so I wanted it. And it only cost me about £4, I think. And I was like, what? Why have they covered it in all this concrete and green stuff? And so there's half the room thinking this could be really old. This could actually have come from a real dig. And then there's the other half of the room who said that's a piece of brass they've covered in concrete to make it look old. But I carried that around for ages as a kind of a good luck charm. And the same with in Mexico, I was given 100 peso coin and change, and I didn't think anything of it until I tried to use it, and they said to me, yeah, you can't spend this. It's kind of like those £5 coins you buy that are really meant to be souvenirs. So I could have taken it to the post office and exchanged it for the 100 pesos, which at the time was about £5, and but I chose to keep it.
Yeah, it's wee things like that. It's like you say, if you ever came across a £5 coin, you'd have kept it. Because I've actually never seen one. It's funny you say that. I've never seen one.
I have.
So what's your hometown? We kind of covered that before. So your hometown, what would you say? If somebody says to you, where are you from? What do you?
Milton Keynes.
Milton Keynes.
Or Great Linford, but yeah.
Okay. Your favourite food?
My favourite food? Oh boy. I like to experiment a lot. I mean, I discovered a recipe for a Mongolian stew, which is going in the slow cooker and everything. It was great. It's just I'm very good at thinking, well, I don't like soy sauce, so I use teriyaki sauce and change it. So when people say, what are you making? And I'm like, well, it was Mongolian stew, but I've changed this and this, so I don't really know what it is now. It's just a stew.
Eleanor stew.
Yep. Yeah, Eleanor stew, yeah.
Favourite country that you've travelled to?
Oh, so many for different reasons. My current favourite country has got to be Finland. And I think, yeah, it's somewhere that I thought about going back in 2001, because I discovered a band that were from there. And I think it'd be nice to see Finland, but I was kind of put off thinking it's going to cost a fortune.
Yeah.
And then I went to see a Finnish band who were playing at the Cat House, and I got talking to the lead singer after the show, and he just went, anytime. And I just thought, yeah, I'm going to do it. And it was exactly what I'd hoped for, just wilderness and water everywhere. You can literally be driving on a road that's got water both sides of you. So when it gets really late in like the midnight, is because it's also land of the midnight sun. Yeah. Their sun very rarely set. It doesn't usually set during midsummer. So you can be driving along and you have all these colors, and you just look out the window and it's all reflected from the sky into the water. And I mean, when I was there, I got my geography a little mixed up. There was a place I wanted to go and see that was a 2-hour drive from where I was staying. And I drove it. The car almost broke down and didn't find what I was looking for, and had to drive all the way back. But I didn't care because I'd enjoyed the drive so much. Yeah. It was just so beautiful.
Sometimes they're the best situations, the kind of things that happen. We were, it was my anniversary last week and a half ago. We went down to Gretna for the night.
Yeah.
We came back up, but instead of going motorway, we went up the coastal road up the west of Scotland, and we'd done this thing where every town we stopped in, we take a wee picture of the sign. I've got the stuff there to put it on like a kind of video, but you know what it's like. You just end up saying, "Oh, I'll get into that." So, but we accidentally took a wrong turn and ended up going 2 hours back the way. And then by the time we got back, we're like, well, we'll basically just go on the motorway and just get up the road, rather than re-go through it all again.
Yeah.
So, travelling, how do you relax when you're travelling? What do you find best calms you down?
What do I find calms me down?
We've done all the hectic travelling, you've got through the airports and things like that. You just need to chill out.
I think once the traveling is done and you're there, then you pretty much know. I mean, I know waking up the morning that you're going to go traveling and you're running around the house thinking, good, if I definitely got everything, and then there's the stress of, and then once you're at the airport and you're checked in, you kind of know that the pressure's off you, and it's now the airline's responsibility to get you there. But I do prefer arriving towards the end of the day so that you can just come in, settle down, and just sleep, and then when you wake up in the morning. Although I do remember also hearing Michael Palin saying something along those lines, that all you really need is a hot shower and a change of clothes. Like, say you've been on an overnight train or bus, and that's pretty much you ready to wake up and face the day. But I don't know. I just always seem to have this new energy when I arrive there, and it's just like, right, it's your first day here. What are we going to do? We have to go out and find out as much information about what there is to do and see here. And
do you do a lot of planning before you go?
I usually have a list. In fact, that's another thing I have on my phone, is just a list of places that I definitely have to see. And then I maybe add to it as I go along, because you do meet people along the way. People will recommend things, and yeah. Okay.
What's your favourite artist or song?
Artist? I do
musical.
like Dali a lot.
Who?
Dali.
Dali? Oh no, sorry, I meant like musical.
Oh, musical artist. Yeah. I enjoy a lot of different bands. Like, there'll maybe be one song I like by each band. The only two that I follow religiously would be Nightwish and Rammstein.
Oh, really?
And Nightwish with a band from Finland that I've been to their hometown actually.
Nice.
Met the guy who put them together.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you taken them up on that offer and you went over and seen them for
Sorry?
You taken them up on the offer that they gave you and went over?
It was very funny actually, because the singer I spoke to, he's not from Nightwish. I found out about them because the guitarist from Nightwish also plays in this band they call Brother Fire Tribe, and the whole thing actually started off as a joke, because Brother Fire Tribe is the translation of Finland's most famous tennis player. But they came to play in Glasgow, and they were very 80ish, very Bon Jovi, which is right up my street. Had a chat with the lead singer, and I don't think he was really not interested in talking to me first, but I was just like, can I ask you a question? And he went, right, okay. And I said something in Finnish just to say, do you understand what I'm saying? And he's like, yeah, that's really good. You pronounced that really well. And then he made me say it about 3 or 4 times. And how do you know that? And I said, well, I have always wanted to go, so I learned a few phrases and stuff. And he just went, anytime. So when I booked the trip, it was Monday. I was going down to the post office to get my euros, and my flight was on the Thursday. And that was when it was announced that he was going to be playing in a pub in Helsinki on the Friday night. And I was like, well, I know where I'm going now. And I remember him walking in, and I was like, hi. And he looked at me and went, moi, which is Finnish for hi. And I was like, yeah, right, he doesn't recognize me. But I could see him looking at me like, I know her. I know
that face.
Yeah. And then halfway through the show, the singer who'd been with him, because I'd got a seat right next to where the stage was going to be. And the guitarist the whole time was like, oh, can I put my jacket here? Can I put my thing here? And I said to him, sorry, you need to speak to me in English because I don't understand. And then all of a sudden during the rehearsal, he just looks over to me and went, is it too loud? And that was when Pekka, the singer, he nearly fell off his bar stool. He was like, she's here. That's so funny.
It's funny when that moment, it just click.
Yeah.
So what's your favourite drink?
I like to try different drinks. I gave a friend of mine a shock recently when we met for coffee, and I asked him, I said, do you want a coffee? And I said, yes, could you get me a peppermint latte, please? And he went, I beg your pardon? And I was like, yeah, I know it sounds terrible, but I tried it in a coffee shop in Ecuador, and while it's not a particularly appetizing drink, it just brings memories back.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
So is that what you're going for, a peppermint latte?
Sometimes.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Favorite? Ooh, Star Wars.
What one?
The very first one from 1979, A New Hope.
Okay.
And it's because my dad played it for me when I was about 4 years old, and I don't think I understood much of what was going on at all, other than the good guys beat the bad guys at the end, and then you watch it more and more and more as you're growing up, and you gradually get to understand more of the plot. So yeah.
Okay. Favorite TV show or season?
I don't really watch a lot of TV.
Are you not a Netflixer?
I am recently. Somebody suggested watching The Witcher, but that's something that's based on a computer. Good. I'm not really sure I got it. I like Vikings.
All right, okay.
In fact, I like a lot of while the guy who created Vikings claims to be historically accurate, he really isn't. So but it's still entertaining. The Vikings show, the Tudors show, Murdoch Mysteries. Let's go for Murdoch Mysteries.
I've not heard of that one.
Yeah, it's basically Canadian Sherlock Holmes. Right. And like Sherlock Holmes, they like to go into a lot of supernatural subjects as well.
Cool.
So it's, yeah.
Can you speak any other languages?
Yeah, I make a point of trying to learn a few words of each language of every country that I go to. So I know my Spanish pretty well, because it was pretty much all I spoke for a couple of months, because I've said to people, they say to me, do you want to learn? I want to learn a language. And I say, well, where are you going? Because if you're going to like holiday destinations in Spain, there's no point, because they'll want to practice their English as much as you want to practice your Spanish. But if you're in South America and you're outside the capital city with no guide, then you will have to. Yeah. Because people just won't be able to speak. I learned Dutch for 1.5 years. I learned German through listening to Rammstein, because that's the language they sing in. Started learning some Finnish, but I don't know very much.
Right, okay. It's funny when you say that. You seen the travel t-shirts where it's like a big list of pictures, and it's like sleep, and like it's got all these different pictures of things that you would want to do when you're traveling, like basics like toilets, like restaurants, all that kind of thing, and it's all like on the t-shirt, and you just like point to it.
Yeah.
It's quite a good idea.
I've not heard of those. No.
No, it's
No.
I don't know what they're called, but yeah, I've seen quite a lot of people use them. They look quite good.
No, I normally just see the funny ones, like when I was in Alaska, I remember seeing a t-shirt and it was just a wall of all different designs, and it was the same thing, Alaska pissing off Texas since 1959, 69, because Texas was always the biggest state and everything's bigger in Texas, but then when Alaska joined in, they're 2.5 times bigger than Texas, so no, please.
Somewhere that you want to travel but you haven't yet?
India.
India?
Mm-hmm.
Why India?
It strikes me as being very like what happened in Argentina and Namibia, Mexico, just so much all in one country that each city that you went to would be completely different from the last one. So, you could almost just so many different cultural experiences in one place. That's what I imagine India would be like. I mean, I've seen pictures, obviously, of the Taj Mahal. Everybody knows that. There's some beaches where I think there's still some hippies left over from the 1960s. Kind of go just kind of just to experience it. But then there's another place right up in the north, I'm told, might be a mountainous place, but they say in winter it just gets so cold that the water is not only thick enough to walk across, but there's a waterfall that freezes in motion. Wow. So it's, you can actually see all the bumps in the water where it's come down. There's loads of places.
I've had quite a lot of travellers on. I've had a couple of travellers on from India. It's funny you say that. There's so many different things in India, because the Indian travellers that I've had on the podcast, they have only travelled in India. Mm-hmm. So there's what they say is there's just so much. I kind of imagine it like America, that each corner of America is so different that when I say about Americans don't really travel outside of America, is because everything they could get.
No need to, yeah.
Yeah, everything's in America, whereas in India, it kind of strikes me as along the same lines.
I would just, from what I've understood, well, I mean, it's a huge country. I believe India is one of the 8th biggest countries in the world. So, yeah, you could probably spend a year traveling in India and not see everything.
How long do you think you would travel there for? How long do you think you would take for that?
For India, without giving up my job, I would only probably be allowed 3 weeks there. I'd love to do maybe a 3-month stint, because obviously you've got money to think about, and yeah.
It'd be good. It'd be good. You know, it'd be great if you could like work on the go. You know what I mean? Like take your work with you. I think that would be really good.
I don't know. I remember before, it was at 2007. I'd not long been to Venezuela. Yeah, I was to think about what I wanted to do, and I thought, well, I'd love it if my Spanish was good enough. Oh, I see what you're doing. I didn't see it fall down.
This, my stuff at the back is very what's the word? I've not actually had like the opportunity to do it in my office yet. So everything is just kind of sitting like this. But I think I'm just going to take these off and then go like that. White background, the way it is. Sorry about that. That's quite embarrassing.
No. So yeah, working, because I was not long back from Venezuela, and I was kind of just obsessed with going out to South America, and I just thought, well, why don't you go out there and get a job? Like, you could do auxiliary, because I'm a nurse to trade, but if I was working as, say, an auxiliary or a care assistant, I could do that, practice my Spanish, get it up to the level where it's just 100% fluent, and then take trips. You know, we side trips while I was out there on holiday and things. But when I actually sat down and looked at it, I had a list of places that I wanted to go to this long. I was thinking, so you'll need time off to go to Easter Island, you'll need time off to go to Salta, you'll need time off to go up into Bolivia, time off to go to Antarctica. And I just thought to myself, you don't want to work at all, do you? You'd be too impatient. So I just spent the money on a trip to Easter Island.
Have you ever considered going like full-time traveller?
I don't know how I would fund that. If I could, I probably would.
Have you ever? Do you like blog about anything you do? Or do you?
I do have a page on Facebook that I blog on called The Traveling Witch.
Okay.
And that was a nickname that I got given by friends of mine because I travel a lot, and because some of the places that I'm into, I like old folklore stories. I like visiting archaeological places like stone circles, castles, all that kind of stuff. So it just, it was a bit of a giggle.
So do you have like a Instagram or anything like that at all either for that?
No. I don't know. I probably should. The problem with things like Facebook is you can spend ages writing an article together, and maybe not many people will see it, but then if you post a silly meme just to give yourself something to do in the meantime, that'll get 1,000 likes equally.
No, absolutely. So let's go back to when you started travelling. So you said when you were younger you used to go quite a lot of travelling because of your dad. You like to go out and about. What was your very first holiday you can remember? Was that the one to Wales, did you say?
That would have been in Bedessie Coed, yeah.
So can you remember your first trip abroad?
Yeah, because I was nearly 18. No, I don't know if my dad just didn't have any interest in going abroad, but it was when we were in our late teens that we had to say, come on, Dad, I know you don't want to go abroad, but we do, and we're fed up with Butlins. So that was when we went to America on a driving trip up around. And so, I mean, my dad enjoyed getting out and seeing the leaves, but he didn't really seem to have as much of an interest in sightseeing. For him, it was about the climb up and getting up to really high, looking down at the view. Because sorry, go ahead.
So your first trip to America, what was that like?
It was, well, at first I made the same mistake a lot of people make about Australia, that we have it in our head that America's tropical temperatures all year round. So there's us turning up in October with all our summer clothes. It was different. I mean, we arrived in Boston and we spent a couple of days there. I mean, I do enjoy city visits, but my goal is usually to get out of the city because I prefer being out in the countryside.
Yeah.
We timed it so we were going to be seeing the leaves, all the different coloured leaves, and we saw loads of those driving along the freeways. In fact, it was funny because we'd flown out on a Sunday to save money, but not realised that we couldn't return the RV on a Sunday, so we ended up staying in a hotel the first and last nights. And Dad was like, everywhere's booked. You wouldn't expect everything to be booked out of season. Obviously, people are coming to see the leaves. And then the hotel people were like, no, it's because there's a Red Sox game on tomorrow. So they were all there to see the leaves. Yeah. It was interesting because we all took a turn up, with the map sitting next to my dad doing the driving, living in the kind of caravan. There's the kind of campsites they have out there. They aren't like they have here. Like, I would think campsite, I would just think of an empty field basically with a shower block. But in America, they tend to set them in forests so that, your hookup site will be full of trees. It'll be basically a clearing with some trees. They'll provide you with a fire pit. Yeah, they do everything really. They're like, it's like it's like in Germany. They really they take it really seriously. Mm-hmm. The one that I didn't discover it on that trip, it was when I went to California years later when they talked about the bear box, which I know is deadly serious, but I just found it hilarious that if you left any food whatsoever in your car, you would probably have a bear rip the roof off your car to get at this food. And just when you come back and find that your car's a write-off, the rangers will hit you with a fine for not putting the food in the bear box where the bear couldn't get it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't have enjoyed that.
No. No, it was a huge, because I was with an American friend when that trip happened, when we went to Yosemite. And I was literally, the car was here, the bear box was there, there's like that of a distance, and I'm standing, and it was like he expected me to close the doors of the bear box to turn around and get something else out of the car. And I was like, they're not. And he's like, no, honestly, they hide behind the trees watching you to watch for an opportunity to run up and steal something. So there's me picturing these bears tiptoeing from tree to tree to tree. It was a source of endless jokes.
So traveling, was it something that you'd always planned to do from a young age, or was it something you kind of just, you've developed a taste for and you've kind of fell into?
I think it kind of started to show the differences, because after that trip to America, my two sisters said that they didn't really enjoy this kind of on the road thing. They wanted just a beach and just to chill out for a week, whereas that's the kind of holiday that I do enjoy. No, it was the newspaper article that made me want to go and do that. And then once I'd met people that had done backpacking trips and things, I was just like, what, you can do this? You can just backpack and go. And I was like, oh, right, I want to do that.
So tell us a bit more about that. So you read the news article, I'm guessing you applied to do it. So
and I very nearly didn't go, because at that, I don't know how much it is now, but if you want, the trip itself would have cost about £1,000, but they needed about nearly £3,500 in sponsorship. And I'd only got about 2/3 of it ready by the time the trip came around, but they were happy to let me go on the understanding that I made the rest of the payments when I got back. So I guess I was very lucky.
So where was that to again, sorry?
That was to Machu Picchu, to go and do the Inca Trail.
All right, okay. So what did you do over there? What did you?
The very first flight, the longest leg of the flight is to Lima, and you arrive in Lima. They fly you up to Cusco, which would be the Inca capital, and they'll take you on your acclimatization tour, because you're 1,000 meters above sea level up there. And a lot of the altitude does affect a lot of it. So they just take you on your city tour and everything to get you used to it. And then the day after that, you'll be taken out into the mountains to see some of the most stunning scenery you'll ever see in your life, to kilometer 82, which is where the trail starts. And then basically you're dropped off. You walk for, I think it's 42 kilometers or maybe 42 miles, the whole trip. And it's divided up into 4 days. So you've got the walking, and you stop and see ruins along the way. They tell you some of the stories about the Inca history, because the Inca Trail itself, the city tour that they take you around Cusco city center, that is when Peru was colonized by the Spanish. They first arrived, the Inca were like, who are these people that are arriving? Well, they, you know, they don't look like us. Yeah, they're, you know, because native, especially in that part of Peru, the people would have been quite dark skinned because of the sun. I mean, in the lowlands on the coast, people are a lot darker, but the dark hair and the very, I don't really know, it's just their facial features, they're obviously very different. So when these Spanish people arrive, you know, with their white skin and things, they're like, oh, who are these people? They don't look like us. They must be gods. And they welcomed them with open arms, and they showed them the places around the city and just treated them as though they were gods, only for the Spanish to then start stealing their land, stealing their money, dismantling their ruins. Yeah. So they kind of fled and disappeared to the, well, I can't remember that part of the history, but the Inca Trail itself, we know nothing about it because the Incas didn't want the Spanish finding out where their capital city was. Yeah. So that's the thing we've had to make up our own names for and things. Because the Inca didn't tell us. They realised that the Spanish weren't friendly by that point.
So that was your very first trip alone, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you go about preparing yourself for that? I mean, when you got there, did you have hesitations about, oh my God, what am I actually doing here? Or was it, right, throw yourself right into it and just see where it goes?
Probably throwing myself right into it. I mean, I've been told for such an experienced traveller, I'm actually quite naive because I've been telling people stories and they're saying, well, you're not terrified. And I was like, no, I didn't really think about that. I trained myself physically for Peru. I mean, there was a walking trail. You'll probably know it actually. If you're going through Denny, you would go up through Stonywood, through the woods, down past Shanghai, and then you can end up going up through Dunny Pace. You cross over a bridge that comes around the back of Dunny Pace, over that metal bridge that goes along the old railway line. And sometimes I would go up as far as Dunovan Road, back round at the Bonnie Bridge, the roundabout at Bonnie Bridge where the tip is, home through Bonnie Bridge, up the Drove Lone and back into Denny. And I was doing that a couple of times a day. It got obsessive. Just, you know, your metabolism goes right up. You're sitting in the house at the end of the day thinking, I'm not doing anything. I could go out for another walk.
Yeah.
And the people organising the walk from the charity, they said, really, is that all you're doing? You're not going to the gym? You're not going on the treadmill? And I was like, no. But the people who'd been at the gym going on the treadmill in their walking boots were the ones who actually didn't do as well on the actual walk. Yeah.
It's funny that, because when you talk about people, you know, preparing for marathons and things like that, the people that run on the treadmills never do as well as the people that are actually in the streets.
I've heard a lot of it's something to do with the resistance that you just get used to. I don't think I've been on a treadmill and I couldn't tell you what the feeling, whether it's a soft landing or a hard landing, but they say it's better for you to use an actual road.
Yeah, absolutely. So after that, what was your next adventure?
I went back the following year because during my last year, I got involved in the Duke of Edinburgh.
Okay.
So from a Duke of Edinburgh expedition, I went over to Northern Ireland to do a 4-night camping expedition in the Mourne Mountains, and it was just a route that was pre-prepared, with compasses, because you have to do it all yourself for the Duke of Edinburgh. You can't do your own. You can't do a pre-recorded trail, because I think some people would use that Inca Trail walk or the Great Wall of China to try and do the Duke of Edinburgh, but you're not allowed to do that. It has to be something you've navigated yourself. And the woman who organised that told me about a trip that was going over to Peru to a different part to help with, it's called Camp Cusi, and their mission was, Peru has a huge problem, I think like we probably did here 150 years ago, with little boys on the streets who are homeless, and they get themselves addicted to glue and basically selling themselves. And if that wasn't bad enough, they're basically, the government just doesn't care about them. There was a incident in the papers around about that time where a child, a child from a respectable family had been shot and killed by a policeman in the street. And when the policeman was asked why he'd done it, he said, "Oh, I thought it was a street boy," expecting that, because that would have been all right. Which, I mean, it isn't. But they would have So the company that I went with, I think it was part of or supported by the Scripture Union, and their mission was just get these boys off the street and get them to some of these schools to get them an education and just get them a better start in life. And we were basically making mud bricks in order for them to build these schools with. So that was, I didn't do it as part of my Duke of Edinburgh. I called it a post-gold because I just wanted to go back.
And a lot of your travelling, has it been, aimed at charity-based work, or is it just kind of fell into that?
I think I fell out of that. I mean, I would do things for charity. It's just, it does cost a lot of money if you want to do it for charity, because you'll have to pay for the cost of the trip plus 2 or 3 times over to make it worthwhile for the charity sending you.
Yeah. Okay. Let's have a look. So the travelling you've done, has it all been solo travelling, or is it travelling that you've done have you done any travelling in groups, or have you done it with other people?
No, it has mostly been solo. I think it's only been maybe if there's somebody that I know there that, like when I went to California, it was because as it was a friend who I'd met on a trip 2 years before, and we just kept in touch through Facebook. And like you were saying about American travelers, he'd been absolutely everywhere in America. So if I was planning on going, I would just message him and say, what can you suggest, or what recommendations do you have? Yeah. And when I said I wanted to go to Yosemite, he was like, can I come?
Have you done any travelling? Is it in a group? Or
no.
Is it, no, nothing.
The only ones were the charity groups and the Duke of Edinburgh one.
Okay. And have you ever had any hesitations about travelling solo?
I remember the trip to Venezuela being a bit of a nerve-wracking one.
Okay. Why was that?
It was when I was in Ecuador, and I gave myself challenges when I traveled about things that I have to achieve. Like when I first started, I said I wanted to go to all 7 continents. And once I'd done that, I was thinking, what else can I do? And then I said, let's do the list of ists. And they said, what do you mean? And they said, well, I've seen the longest river in the world. I probably won't ever go to the highest mount, because once altitude sickness, I think, would finish me off if I tried to climb Everest. And I wanted to see the world's highest waterfall, which is the Angel Falls in Venezuela. And I started talking about that when I was in Ecuador, but so many people kept saying, you can't go to Venezuela. It's just far too dangerous. Yeah. And they said actually the opposite of what you would expected. They would say, you have to go to Colombia, which has got a very bad reputation for, for kidnapping tourists and things. They said, no, that used to be the way, but well, Colombian drug lords apparently had realized that there was no point in kidnapping tourists, because they're very rarely, you're better off kidnapping, whether they were joking, I don't know. Yeah. But I just really, really wanted to go to Venezuela. So I called it off. I ended up not going from Ecuador. I just spent a couple of weeks down at the coast. But when I came home, I still had the idea in my head, and I talked about it. And then I went back to Falkirk College to see my old language teacher, to just talk to her and show her how much more of the language I'd learned. And she introduced me to a fellow teacher from Santiago. Mm-hmm. And I told her the story, and she went, look, when you think about it, it's just a capital city. You've been to Santiago, you've been to Lima. These are not safe cities. And when you think about it, London isn't really that safe. So as long as you're sensible, I'm sure you'll be fine. Yeah. And that's how it was. I mean, I do remember getting off the plane and making sure everything of value was strapped to my body where you couldn't see it, because I'd even read horror stories about them putting substances on the toilet walls so that if you were in there, you would breathe it in and you would pass out. And oh wow. Yeah, but no. Well, one other horror story I heard about was a girl who'd hung up a hammock and basically gone to sleep, and when she woke up, everything, including the clothes she was wearing, had been stolen. But I was just like, well, why would you do that if nobody was watching it? Yeah. We slept in hammocks because the Angel Falls trip was just of a group that was put together. So, we were sleeping in hammocks, but all our stuff was locked away by the guides. So. And
was that the only thing that you went to Venezuela for, was just to see the falls?
I had heard about the flat top, they call them the Table Mountains. Well, no, in America they call them the Table Mountains. They call them the Tepuy, I think, in Venezuela, and it's flat top mountains. And you can see them from a place called Santa Elena, just on the very south, near the border with Brazil.
Okay. Have you got any other passions aside travelling?
Music. I would love to be able to sing, so I'm taking some lessons at the moment. I'm not sure. I do crochet a lot. I made a couple of the blankets I've got here. I just like trying new things, and you get a lot of that through travel. Been involved with dancing, been archery, reenacting. So it's not something that I strictly follow. It's just when I get the opportunity.
Yeah, just kind of like you get the chance to just jump on it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a couple of questions that I do like to ask people on everyone I speak to. So when you're traveling, you must have at least one moment, one breathtaking moment that has just made you stand there and go, "This is why I'm doing this."
Mm-hmm. Quite a few. When you say you've got quite a few and you need one specific one that comes to. I remember the last time I was in Finland, it was a short, you take the subway out of Helsinki and it eventually becomes a train line.
Mm-hmm.
And it was I'd looked up sacred sites around Helsinki, and it told you about this cave that was either water or wind eroded, so it kind of looked like a womb, so they thought it had a lot of pre-Christian significance.
Yeah.
And once I got there, I just carried on walking and ended up with just this huge landscape of rocks, and where the rocks kind of cracked apart, there's like there's a coniferous tree that's grown in there, and it was February, so there was still that kind of icy tinge to the air, so when the sun's coming up and the clouds are catching it,
Amazing.
It was probably standing looking over Machu Picchu as well, and and one silly one. After on the Antarctic cruise, which takes about 10 days, one of the very last ones, where it was just like everybody just blowing off some steam, where they took us to this one island. Can't even remember the name of it, but what everybody ended up doing was taking their jackets off, sitting on them and using like sledges to slide down the hill, which is great.
It's funny because you can see the joy in your face when you talk about these things.
A lot of people say that. Yeah.
It's it's like you can see yourself going back there. Like,
yeah.
What's it? Have you ever had any scary encounters? Anything that's made you consider traveling?
That's made me consider, or maybe
reconsider. Sorry.
Oh, reconsider. No. There was the example I mentioned about my first night made me think that I need to go home, but when I said that, I thought, no, this is not going to work. I've totally misunderstood the money. I've not got enough and things. But no, I think all I needed was a good night's sleep for that, because I've been traveling all day.
But the
one story that I really thought, I have two, if that's not being, because one of them happened in China, and when you look at the Lonely Planet for China, there's only really 3 major tourist place sites that it points out, and one of them is Pingyao. And Pingyao's fabulous. It's like going back in time. There's no paved roads there. It's an ancient walled city. The place where I was staying in was a hostel, where they have this tradition in China where they build a step for your door, rather than having a flat doorway. So you have to take a big step to get into the building, and the belief is that it will keep evil spirits out, because they're big, clumsy, bumbling zombie things, and they can't get into the house because they would just fall over the doorstep. And the bed I was sleeping on was basically a shelf under the window that they'd padded enough with blankets. It was still comfortable. But I ran out of, I didn't actually run out of money, but I had no more money in my pocket, so I needed to use an ATM somewhere. And it never occurred to me that the 3rd biggest tourist attraction in China wouldn't have a cash machine. So the woman said to me, here's where you go. It's a place called Taiyuan. And I thought, right, that's fine. But I didn't even have enough money on me for the train fare. So I had to go back to the hostel and I usually keep souvenir money from a couple of every coin and some of the lower denomination notes as souvenirs. And went back, and this time I was like, I wonder why the train fare is cheaper. But I then realized that that's a regional train that was going to make a lot more stops and take a much slower route. And after I'd been on the train nearly 2 hours, I remember thinking to myself, look, this is ridiculous. 2 hours to use a cash machine. There's a Bank of China there. I'll just get off here. Because it was so far outside of Pingyao that now all the signs were in Chinese, so I had no idea where I was. But the woman opposite me had just looked at the piece of paper for where I was going, and she was kind of nodding at me, at every station. She was like, no, it's not this one. So when I tried to get off, they were all like, no, you can't get off here. And I'm like, no, honestly, I'm fine. I just need that. And then when I got off the train and the train had gone, I realized what they'd been trying to warn me about. Because again, this was like no paved roads, very dark. It was a Bank of China office, so there was no cash machine there, and then I get back into the train station to realize that while they had a state-of-the-art machine to scan your baggage, there was no ticket office. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So the people from the train were leaving for the night, so I don't think there was another. And they're trying to speak to me, and I'm really sorry, I don't understand. And by some miracle, they found the ticket that they'd taken off me when I got off the train. So they realized the mistake, and she walked me to the bus, and she put me on a bus, and they paid for the bus, which I thought was really good of them. Because it was my fault for getting off the train. They could have made me pay for the bus myself. Got there, tried about 3 or 4 different machines. Sorry, your card's been declined, or whatever. And I'm like, what am I going to do here? Have I used a dodgy cash machine somewhere? Someone's got my numbers and stolen all my money. But I think just certain banks don't like different cards. So I eventually got my money. And I'm like, right, now what? I came here by bus. I don't know where the train station is. So I pulled over a taxi, and I thought, well, if I show him my train ticket, he'll know that I want to go to the train station. Mm-hmm. But he thought I was trying to use my train ticket to pay for a free taxi ride. And all right, okay, what do I do? A restaurant. There's people standing. Maybe the waiters will speak English. Let's try. But they completely didn't. And just when I got to the point, I was just like, right, I have no idea what else to do. I've tried everything I can think of. How am I going to get myself out of this situation? And then right last minute, do you need any help? This man just from nowhere, so he explained the problem to the taxi driver, and he just said to me, if this ever happens again, the word for train station is washadan. And I was just like, can I help you? So he got me to the train station, no problem. The next train wasn't for over an hour, and it's nearly midnight by this point. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm quite happy to wait in the train station. I'm sure I'm safe here. And I got back on the train to finally head back to Pingyao, and the Chinese says there. Somebody told me before I went there that you would see people, they just really want to talk to you, and I'm just like, yeah, because they want to practice their English. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And you'll see them, and just they're trying to translate the words as they're speaking. But the man who wanted to talk to me on the way back on this journey, I'm just, what was it? He said, "You're very tall. That's good in China for having babies." And I went, I just want to get home. And then when I finally got there, I just like, motor taxi, please, the last leg of the journey, take me here to the card. And he didn't. He took me to the place he was working for. So I'm trying to explain to these people, yes, I'm sure your hotel's lovely, but I already have a room that I've already paid for, and all my stuff is there. So can you please just take me? And that was one of the stories that everybody says, well, you're not terrified. And I was like, no, I'm more annoyed.
How many countries have you travelled to?
Right, here we go. America, Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Argentina, Brazil, Namibia, Tanzania, Kenya, Egypt, Turkey, Russia, Hong Kong, China, Australia, New Zealand, Estonia, Finland, Iceland, all right in the UK, so England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, France, Germany, Netherlands, Italy. It's at least 30 anyway.
Oh. So you've done a fair bit of travelling. Have you got any ambitions to go to every country?
Maybe not every country.
You know how you get
I've
these
certainly
travellers.
still got a very long list of places that I still want to see.
Yeah. And you know how you get the travellers that want to go everywhere, they want to go to every country, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so The
I
next
don't
part,
actually know if that's physically possible. I mean, one thing that I would love to do is that in America, and I say America because I'm talking about right from the way, there's the La Ruta Tres route, which is Route 3, and that goes right from the northern tip of Alaska. You can drive it continuously right down to the tip of South America, and that I think would be an amazing thing.
I think actually there's a documentary about that on Netflix.
But it isn't physically possible, because when you get that border in between Panama and Colombia is a no-go zone. It's just so dangerous for cartels that you're not allowed to do it. You have to take the boats from Panama City, I think, into Cartagena. So it's, but also I've had a lot of people saying you can't be a white woman on your own doing that. You'll just be a magnet for people trying to attack you. So I don't know. I don't know if a lot of people just say that, whether it's actually true, or whether I'd just be the headstrong redhead. You'll be just like, well, I don't care, I'm doing it anyway, and end up. Don't want to be too devoid of common sense.
So the next part is usually where I get a question from my daughter, but I've not had a chance to speak to her today because it was first day back at school. So she's been, I say I've not had a chance to speak to her, but I've not had a chance to speak to her about the podcast. So we had her up, got her dressed, went to school this morning. So it's first day back. However, what we can do is we can move straight on to story time. All right. So the first time we tried to make this happen, I can explain to you that what I want you to do is take us on a journey. Just tell us in detail about one place, one adventure, or one adventure that you want to share with us, in as much detail as possible. Some things that you did, some stuff that you've eaten, just somewhere you think everyone must go at least once in their life. And I've put you on the spot.
Yeah, well, I knew where you were going with this. Well, no, sorry, that's not. When you started talking, I thought about one trip that I've actually tried to write stories about for writing competitions and things like that. But when I say something, the reason I enjoyed it so much is because it's exactly the kind of thing that would appeal to me. I think probably a lot of people would get there and think, right, okay, because it's.
Forget about other people. I want to hear what appeals to you. So yeah, what's that story?
Okay. It went back to flying from Rio to Buenos Aires, which wasn't part of the original plan. I'd had no plans to go to Argentina or Chile until the travel agent, when booking, said, if you want to go to Rio and then on to Lima, you have to go to Buenos Aires and Santiago. It's just such a worthwhile. And she was right. Buenos Aires is amazing. I'd never been to Italy at that point, but I felt like I was in Italy because of the architecture. But on the In-Flight magazine, there was this thing, and I don't remember if it was a documentary from school or something that I'd watched with my mum, about some native cultures from, well, I couldn't remember. It was, but part of their culture was to mix paints out of different shades of ochre, so red, yellow, and white, and just all different colors. Then they put their hand up against the wall of a cave and they spit the paint at it, so when they remove their hand, there's like a negative image, and they do it at various stages of their life. And I just looked in the In-Flight magazine and I was, oh, Patagonia, that's where that is. That'd be a fun thing to go and see. Nice day trip. Only it's over 1,000 kilometers from Buenos Aires, so that obviously ruled that out straight away. But once I'd spent my week in Buenos Aires and on to Santiago, I'd met a girl from Santiago in Buenos Aires, and we met up later in Santiago, and she took me on an afternoon city tour. She said, right, that's it, there's nothing else to do here, so move on. The original plan had been Easter Island, but when I realized it actually cost the same to fly from Santiago to Easter Island as it does to fly from Glasgow to Easter Island, I decided, no, I'm not doing that. I can wait for another time. She sent me down to Puerto Montt, which is the Chilean Lake District, which would have been beautiful, but the weather was terrible. So I took a bus back over the border into Argentina to the chocolate capital of the country. And then I started thinking about my hand cave again. And I thought, well, I'm only 700 kilometers here. I could hire a car, I could do this. And, the excitement started. So I did it. I got my car. I managed to haggle in Spanish, got my car. I probably would have been better with a 4x4, because once I got so far down, I realized that the roads are no longer paved. And I think I learned a lot about traveling on that trip as well, because I have this much, if I'm driving and I was just like, yes, I'm driving, I'm going to get as far as I can in the day, and quite often would leave it far too late into the evening before finding somewhere to stop or finding somewhere to eat. So I learned a lot about planning your trip on that one. Saw some of the most amazing countryside. It's just lakes that you could see the bottom of, clear skies, red mountains all over. It was just beautiful. I think I enjoyed the drive as much as I enjoyed the trip itself. And a strange experience, because I went through about 3 or 4 different Argentinian provinces on that one, and every single one I was stopped by the police just crossing the border, just as part of the procedure. So every single time I was expecting them to ask to see my driving license, but they didn't. They just asked to see my passport. And I was like, okay, so I'm in the country legally, that's fine, but I could be driving this car without a license for all I know. It just made me giggle. And that was also a trip. That was one of the things where I didn't speak English to anyone for several days because as it was only Spanish.
Yeah.
And then I got there finally on the second afternoon. This was after the point. Let's see. I'd seen Rio Mayo, because you'll see a sign once every 100 kilometers. The towns are very far apart. Got there thinking, right, perfect. It's not too late. I can stop here for the night. This place had nothing in it. It seemed to be, it looked like a military base the way it was spread out. So I was like, okay, I'll keep going. Just as it's getting dark and I hit my first unpaved road, and this was, it was awful because it wasn't just unpaved. It was giant rocks on it that size. There was animals walking, all these wild horses and foxes and everything that just would randomly, and you'd hear rocks hitting off the bottom of the car. And I think that was the first time in a couple of months I'm thinking, I want my mom. I'm terrified.
It's like a Top Gear special.
In fact, I think at one point, just as I was getting used to it, the car actually stopped and spun round. I don't know. Oh yeah, it's just, and I just thought, what am I going to do if this car is broken down? I'm stuck because I've no phone signal out here. It was before the days of smartphones and things like that, but luckily it just stalled. I don't know what had happened to make it do that, but they're just driving along, and not even that fast, maybe only 40 kilometers an hour, but it was fast for the road conditions. So that was a stroke of luck. And I got there and I spent the afternoon there, and it was just, for me, it was just magical, because it was almost like an oasis in these orange, really arid hills, and you had the rock face here with all the paintings on it, and then this little stream, and about the only stretch of green for miles and miles around. And that was when you mentioned earlier about taking a wrong turn when you were on a trip. I was trying to be clever and plan the route back to Bariloche to avoid that stretch of unpaved road. And then, but because the signs are so far apart, I'd driven about 100 kilometers before I realized I was going the wrong way. So I had to turn around, and I was just like, so you're going to have to go back along that same road to the same place you stayed last night. But no, it was really enjoyable. So, I mean, if you like that kind of culture, I thought it was well worth it. Although I was having a little dinner in Bariloche after I'd returned the car, and just celebrating that was me safe, no more driving, public transport. I see a poster advertising that exact same trip where I could have got the bus, but had it been in season. But I think being on a double-decker bus on those unpaved roads would probably have been a lot worse.
Absolutely. At least that you're in control, you're not putting your faith in someone else. It's just you keep going the way you want to go, and it gives you that freedom as well, is that you're not stuck on a bus. If you want to pull over for a picture or something like that, you can do it. If you're on a bus, you're kind of just held to the whim of the driver. Probably.
I've done similar, like 4x4 cruises, because the La Ruta 40 is one of the most famous roads in Argentina. It goes from the bottom right down to the top, so you'd come across it. In fact, I said that when I was in north of Argentina a year or so later. It was like, oh, an old friend. But the locals, they're used to it, so these 4x4s just zoom along it. But I find bus travel a lot worse because of the boredom. If you're driving, then you're concentrating, there's something to do, but buses can they're a necessary evil, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. So I usually put up a post on Instagram, all right, just to say, like, if you've got any questions for any of the travellers I speak to, and then I build up like a bank. So once I start running out, I put in a couple of posts up and we get some more questions. So I've got a couple here for you that I've been put up. So who's the most interesting person that you've met so far?
Most interesting person. So many people. does this have to be somebody that they would have heard of, or?
No.
No.
Anyone at all. It's your story. Someone that sticks in your mind.
Somebody that's fixed in my mind. There's so many there's so many people who've had quite inspiring things to me when. That's I don't know what to say to that one.
Or the
I
most,
don't know if it'd be a bit of a letdown to mention somebody who's actually a local man.
No, go for it.
No, that was the Camp Cussy trip when we went to build the school. There was a man who must have been in his 70s when he went with us on that trip. He's probably retired now, but he's a minister in Denny, and he went along on the trip just for the experience. And everybody just marveled at him because he was in his 70s. We were up at altitude. It would have been very hard on the body. He just worked, because I even found pulling the mold off the mud bricks could give you it could bring on a head rush just because of the altitude. But all day long, he just went back and forward with his wheelbarrow. And a lot of people said that was inspiring, especially when at the end of the trip, he came and handed us all a watercolor of this scene that he'd done while we'd all been at a local beauty spot, just seeing this crater lake at the top. We'd all been going about exploring, and he painted it for us, and he'd made a copy for everyone on the trip, which is still upstairs on one of my walls.
Brilliant. Awesome. Tea or coffee?
Depends on the situation. I would never have tea if I'm out in a coffee shop, but I drink a lot of tea in the house.
All right, okay. I'll leave it at that. Let's have a look. What surprised you about yourself while traveling? Do you think it's maybe just been the fact that you've been able to do it? Do you think it's maybe because it's?
I think that does change you a lot. I mean, there is a lot of people will say that the reason they find traveling addictive is because of the freedom it gives you. And it's strange. Do you know, you can say you can look at yourself in the mirror and it's the same person you've always looked in the mirror, but the person looking back at you is a very different person than at home, that maybe they're wearing jewelry or something that they've bought there, but they've just got this vibe about them. It's just, I'm right here where I want to be, and I'm doing exactly what. And the weird thing was that when I came back from that 9-month round the world trip, a lot of people said, you look very different. And they couldn't say why, but they just said either you've lost or you've grown up, or I don't know. It was 25 at the time, so.
Okay, let's go for one more. Right, what's the best street food that you've had?
That would have to be in Thailand. It's and it's everywhere there. And somebody said to me it's quite a reassuring way to eat because it's cooked immediately in front of you. It's about as fresh as you can get. But it was just so simple. Just some chicken, some ginger, some spring onions, all served up with a kind of sweet, sticky honey sauce, big portion of rice. It was amazing, and it's cheap as anything. And sometimes you even get it served to you in banana leaf, so you get the kind of nostalgic experience of just being able to sit and eat it. And
it's funny that, because everyone you speak to about street food, it's always Asia. It's always Asia. And I know you get kind of street food here, but not to the extent of that's kind of like their restaurants. But
I do live off a lot of street food when I'm in Germany, and I should have actually mentioned a currywurst actually, because that's just. I don't know, it's not really more than sausage and chips, or you can have it with the bread roll instead of the chips, where they slice it up and they give you with this sauce that's got star anise and all these, they're Asian spices and some curry sauce on top. But then you have to think of, it was after I did the Sound of Music tour in Austria, the guide said to me, we have a specialty here called the Bosna. It's about the worst, most disgusting thing you could ever put in your body, but I think everybody on the bus went to try it just because it had been. And it is a sausage that's served in a bun, but I don't know, it's very heavy. I think there's a lot of fat content to the sausage, and yeah, you'll really have to make sure you brush your teeth after it because your breath will smell really bad. I mean, South America, I don't think you could really call it street food, but all the restaurants have got terraces, so everybody sits outside and just enjoys the air.
It's one
Probably
place.
because they're about the same price as some of the street food. So
Yeah, it's definitely one place I do want to go myself. South America, as well as Asia. That's a big place as well. My kind of traveling is in Europe. Apart from New York and Jamaica, I've been there.
Oh, Jamaica! I've not been to Jamaica. I'd like to.
It's very good. Very good. Recommend it 100%. So if you ever get a chance, just stop in.
Yeah.
No, but listen, that's pretty much everything I've got for you today. I just want to thank you for coming on and speaking to myself.
You finally to get it organised.
You are now officially the first video guest
on
the Static Traveller. So anyone that's listening to us on a podcast platform, through Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcast, or Anchor, or whatever it is available on YouTube as well, so you can actually see us when we're having this conversation, and that'll be pretty much, hopefully, fingers crossed, that's how the rest of my videos will go, or the rest of my interviews will go. As I say, I done one last week and I lost everything, so it's an absolute nightmare. But fingers crossed that doesn't happen today, once this is finished. But Eleanor, thank you very much for coming on. Why don't you tell everyone where they can see your stories? If you said you don't have an Instagram or anything like that at all, but you've got a Facebook page that
my traveling witch page on Facebook. I haven't been able to update it for quite a while, unfortunately, because of the COVID virus, but I do have plans to go away within the next week or so. So if you enjoy looking at things like stone circles or castles, and anywhere you go that maybe like the Fairy Dell down in Cottingley, other places like that, I like to visit, post photographs, and tell a wee bit of the history as well.
If you send me the link, I'll make sure it's in the description for your Facebook page. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on. I hope you enjoy your adventure in a week or two. Where are you going?
Yeah. Where am I going? I'm going back down to Yorkshire, so it's one of the camps that we go to quite a lot, and some of the reenactor people I know are there, and do a couple of wee side trips. I was told about a priory in a place called Gisborough, which is supposed to have treasure buried under it that's guarded by a raven, so I thought, yeah, that sounds like a fun place to see.
Brilliant. So you can tell all your friends about the podcast, and you can see, you can listen to your stories. But no, listen, thank you very much for coming on and speaking to me. Like I said, the podcast is available on audio on anywhere that you would look for your podcast, and video on YouTube. Also, we have got the Instagram, Facebook, and now Twitter, which I signed up for last night. Still trying to figure out where that one goes. But no, thank you very much. And until the next time, you keep travelling, and I'll stay static. Thank you.